Let me ask you about the 416th Fighter Squadron, Tactical Fighter Squadron. That you after the Air Force Academy, started flying the F-100 Super Sabre, a legendary airplane. And you were a Misty fast forward air controller, FASTVAC. Talk to us a little bit about that mission. You flew 315 combat missions when you were in Vietnam, about 800 combat hours. Well, tell us a little bit about the mission and what made it so challenging and so dangerous.
Well, the mission was really brought about by the fact that the forward air control aircraft that were operating over there in that time frame, 67, 68, were very slow and very vulnerable if they were put into a high threat environment. And the mission of the Misties was to try and stop or to slow down the infiltration of men and materiel from North Vietnam into South Vietnam. And it initially started flying over in the southern part of North Vietnam, where we were encountering all sizes of AAA in SAMs, surface-to-air missiles. And then after the bombing pause in 1968, we began to focus on flying in Laos. We were never totally effective in terms of stopping the flow, but we could certainly impede it. And we were used primarily as visual reconnaissance and also to control fighters that would come into an area. You can imagine Laos, southern North Vietnam, a lot of jungle, a lot of concealment, and so we would go in, find a target. We had marking rockets that we carried on the 100, and the ABCCC people, the Airborne Command and Control folks, would send in fighters, and we would actually put them in on targets. And so we got to do that. The other thing that we did was we were normally the on-scene commanders for anybody who got shot down. We would be the on-scene commander initially till we could beat down the air defenses, and then we would bring in the A-1 SPADs and the helicopters.
You did complete 315 missions, but one of them went particularly badly for you one day. I remember I was at Air Force Times when I first reported the story of the truly incredible story as somebody who's covered a lot of these. Talk to us a little bit about what happened that day, because you were leading a 4-ship that included your new squadron commander, if I recall correctly, and you got hit by a 12.7 millimeter round. And I remember being at a round table where somebody defined it as an insignificant round, and you took exception to that phrase, that it was highly significant from your standpoint. Tell us what happened that day.
Well, it was really a case of hubris, if you will. I was leading actually a 2-ship, and there was another 2-ship coming into the area which had a new squadron commander in it. But in my particular case, we had been scrambled off the alert pad for a target, had gone down deep into the southern part of Vietnam, into 4 Corps, and we struck this target and dropped our bombs, my wingman and I. And as we were pulling off, the FAC said, "Hey, they're shooting at you." And I was offended that somebody would shoot at me. So I decided that I would strafe a gun sight, which is a really dumb thing to do. And so in the course of trying to strafe a gun sight, I got hit, and I tried to get the airplane to water so I could bail out over water, but that didn't work. So eventually I ended up bailing out and floating kind of back across the target area I'd been operating in, not a good thing. Got on the ground and went into the sort of jungle survival mode. I ended up jumping off a canal bank, getting back underneath the thing, and it was back and forth for a couple of hours there. Where the new squadron commander comes in is when I was on the ground and needed support when the bad guys were coming across the rice paddy after me. He came in and strafed them and expended ordnance and literally saved my life. And eventually the FAC said, hey, look, we can't get any Air Force choppers to you, but there's a couple of Army gunships out here that are willing to try and come in and pick you up. So the only problem is there's no room on the outside of the gunship.
Because these were AH-1 Cobras that were.
Well, I didn't know that at the time, see, so I'm down there, and the thought process that goes through my mind, this shows you how inter-service rivalry starts young. Was, literally, forgive the language, but this is what I thought. It's just like the friggin' Army, you know? I mean, here I fly close air support for them every day. They're not gonna let me in a gunship. So the only Army gunships that I'd ever seen were the Hueys, and I thought, I'm armed, I can get in a gunship. Now, I don't have to worry about that. So it was a great surprise to me about 10, 15 minutes later when two of the skinniest helicopters I had ever seen showed up. And eventually one went into a high hover, the other came in, and I went out, and it was that time of the year. There was about 18 inches of water in the rice paddy. I sat down on the skid and grabbed a hold of it, and the gunner popped his canopy and shook his head no, and he pointed to a couple of quick release things. I pushed those, and this gun bay door fell down, and so I stuck one leg back to a cable, grabbed on, and they carried me about 20 miles to a Special Forces camp where there was an Air Force chopper that picked me up and took me to the hospital. But it was